The Houston Cougars and West Virginia Mountaineers match up in what was a ranked matchup just a few hours prior to recording. And also, the conference might be about to lose a football coach.
You are Locked On College Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome to a crossover edition of Locked On Cougs and Locked On West Virginia. I'm one of your hosts, Locked On Cougs, Parker Ainsworth, and I'm joined by Mountaineer Paul of Locked On West Virginia. Paul, I got to ask, I always ask a weird question to start every day, and the commenters can join the conversation down below if they don't know what else to say. Do you put beans in your chili in West Virginia?
Absolutely. Yeah, love
we
beans.
might disagree there, parts. Okay, we might disagree on a lot of things tonight, Paul. But that might be the strongest. Today's was brought to you by Game Time. Best place to get last minute tickets, but Paul's going to have more on that later. Got a lot of stuff to get into with this basketball game Tuesday night, Houston, West Virginia. Wednesday night. I'm getting ahead of myself. I'm just excited about it already. But before we get too far down the line here, the conference is kind of potentially got some big news going on in it. It was being discussed as we're both sitting here to record. Deion Sanders may be about to head to the Dallas Cowboys. He and Jerry have talked. Mike McCarthy is expired contract. There's no severance there. I don't know or care too much. Paul, you just hired a football coach.
Yeah.
What does it do to the Mountaineers if Deion Sanders becomes a pro quickly?
Well, I think, obviously conference-wise, there's a lot of viewership to be lost there for the conference. It's a blow for West Virginia. There's a lot of players on that Colorado roster that I think Rich Rodriguez would want to take a look at. Manu Taimani being one of those, an Ole Miss offensive lineman that just chose Colorado over West Virginia, which we were in his final three along with Colorado. So, among others, there's been a few guys that have gone to the Buffs here over the last couple of weeks that West Virginia was heavily involved with. So, at the very least, you would think that West Virginia would have a chance to re-recruit a lot of those guys, maybe that would have second thoughts without Neon Deion being there, obviously going back home to the Cowboys if it happens.
Yeah, I kind of feel the same way, honestly. I think the biggest impact for Houston, because Colorado was okay, but they also had a Heisman Trophy winner and didn't win the conference, right?
Yeah.
I think that the truth is that roster becomes like free pickings because a lot of those guys chose Colorado for Deion.
That's why they're there.
I will say, by my count, the roster has 5 people from the greater Houston area on it and a whole lot more from Texas that I think U of H folks would be given a real serious look at, to say the very least, including an offensive lineman that just got there from Texas State named Tavion Coleman, 6'2", 285. And I, it's not the biggest guy or anything like that, but I
must
wonder.
Be pretty good then.
I'm about to say, I wonder what kind of nasty streak he's got if he was getting ready to play some Big 12 football at Colorado.
Might be a center.
Probably a center. I do imagine the both of us will cover that throughout the week as it happens. So I don't mean to move too quickly past it, but the conversation between the Cowboys and Deion was officially confirmed, I guess, shortly before we hit record here. Mountaineer Paul, on the hoops thing, I guess something that is more specific to the two teams in conversation here.
Yep.
West Virginia, when I was a kid, when I think about my younger days, was a tenacious full court press kind of basketball program. Things have changed a lot, in no small due. Speaking of coaching changes, that's your transition. In part because of 3 coaches in a series of 18 months now.
Yeah.
What can you tell me about this iteration from like a 10,000 foot level on the Mountaineers? What's the deal there?
Darren DeVries is an elite basketball coach from an X's and O standpoint. Absolutely. He has got these guys. Listen, he had to replace 1 through 13. So, or 1 through 12. We had one guy returning, but he redshirted. So literally not one player remaining from last year's team. Not a very good team, but still continuity matters. And he's got these kids to buy in. And he without Tucker DeVries, his son, who is, you can make a conversation, one of the best scoring wings in the Big 12, obviously. Certainly going to an NBA prospect, and I mean, was huge in wins over Gonzaga, wins over Arizona. Without him, Javon Small playing as the best guard in the conference right now, which is a pretty shocking thing to say. Didn't think I'd be saying that. Leading the Big 12 in scoring, top 5 in assists, doing it all for the Mountaineers. But he's got these guys to buy in. He's won a few games. He's outcoached a few guys that maybe, like you said, from that 10,000 foot view were higher on the totem pole than him. And somehow, some way, he got this team to beat a Kansas team in a conference opener for the first time in 33 years. They lose. So,
well, and so talk to me, because that conference opener you're talking about, you're almost selling yourself short there, Paul, because it was a win over Kansas in Kansas, and
right.
it's hard to win in Fog Allen. What did DeVries or his son, or we're going to get to Small in a second, what went right in that one? Knocking off Kansas at Kansas is hard to do.
Elite defense. The West Virginia is a top 15, top 20 defensive team by most metrics. They've got really, really high buy-in from guys like Sincere Harris, Eduardo Andre, and others on the team that are just, obviously Toby Okani plays big on the wing. And so what they lack in scoring punch, because we're injured right now, they make up for it on the defensive end and causing turnovers. And it's just been a total buy-in on the defensive side of the ball, especially. And that's how they beat Kansas. They held them to probably going to be a season low in the first half in that game. I think they held them close to 20 points in the first half of that game, and gave themselves a very large cushion. And once Kansas started to roar back and Fog Allen really came to life, they were rattled, but they were able to hold on for a 1-point win.
1-point win in Fog Allen is as good as a win anywhere else to me.
They were up big in that game. They led wire to wire. Kansas was never ahead.
Well, and Houston fans remember last year's team lost 4 games the entire season, if I'm not mistaken. I guess 4 games, and then in the Sweet 16, and then one of those 4 games was at Fog Allen, right? Like, that's just hard. And Houston smoked Kansas by 30 when they came to Houston, right? It was more about that environment for your first year in the Big 12 was certainly challenging, but for anyone, it's really, really tough. As you mentioned, the stat I'm sure you heard a bunch of times when broke it was they hadn't lost in how many years?
33.
33
straight home openers.
Yeah, 33 straight conference home openers.
Yeah.
Crazy to see that done like that. You mentioned defense, and I want to talk about how ugly this game could get in the second segment. I think that's frankly going to be, as both teams have multiple guys getting 14 or more points per game. I think that the offense will have some guys that shine through, obviously, but I think this is going to be a really, really ugly one. But Paul, before we get too far, you got something to tell us about game time? It's game time.
I do, man. It's attending the new 12-team college football playoff games is an incredible experience. It brings fans together like never before. I remember the excitement of past playoff games and really can't wait to make new memories with the updated format and extra teams involved. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks. It makes getting tickets for events even easier. It filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Recently, I used the Game Time Picks to find tickets for an upcoming event, and while browsing through the deals was a breeze, I found great value for all kinds of seats around the venue. The super deal in particular that stood out the best for the event. I love that I could see the seats in the app before you buy with that panoramic 360-degree view that they talk about. All in pricing, you toggle that on. No upfront, no surprise, no surprise fees at checkout, plus on-time ticket delivery and lowest price guarantee gave me complete peace of mind. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code Locked On College for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply, but if you create that account, redeem the code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off and download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. And ask yourself this: what time is it? It's game time.
Game time. Paul, there's a lot of newness around West Virginia.
Uh-huh.
I would argue there's very little new about Houston Cougar basketball.
Right.
Are there questions, because these two teams did match up a year ago? Are there questions for West Virginia folks? Or they feel like they know what they're getting into?
Well, I had one of West Virginia's staff members send me something before the year, because the big question about West Virginia before the year was undersized. West Virginia is extremely undersized. Nobody plays small anymore. The bigs around the country were going for incredibly, $800-900 $1 million for a big, just an average big. So big money was being spent. And then so I had somebody send me the Houston Cougars roster where nobody over 6'8", right? That was projected in the starting lineup. And sure enough, West Virginia at the start of the year, now they've moved to a little bit bigger of a lineup because Eduardo Andres come on so strong the last few weeks. We had an injury to Monty Hansberry. But, before that, we were really worried about that undersized team. Houston is everything West Virginia really wants to be. Obviously, we don't have as many scoring options as Houston does. I mean, you guys literally legit have 7-8 guys that get double figures on a given night. Whether it's Francis, Uzon, Sharp, Cryer, Tugler, Roberts. You guys truly have scoring punch all around the roster. West Virginia didn't have that. They have to have things go right for them to win. I think what I would ask you, if you were going to ask me what question I have, is do you think Houston plays bigger than 6'8", and do they struggle in rebounding or anything like that this year? Like, have teams crashed the boards on them, gotten extra second knock opportunities a lot, or anything like that?
First of all, I should have started segment 2, as Mountaineer Paul likes to do, by cracking a do.
We got to crack a do in segment 2.
You got to crack a do in segment 2. Mine is not a do, and I'm not going to give away free sponsorship ideas, but maybe in segment 3 we can talk about what's in mind. No, I think you ask an interesting question, because Houston does line up with a couple 6'8" guys at center/power forward, and I think that undersells their size. And I don't mean that trying to be too terribly biased, but like JoJo Tugler listed at, 6'7" on most rosters you read. Tugler also has a 7'6" wingspan, and so like the ability to make up for being, again, 6'7", is entirely through high motor, constant energy, chaotic energy, and his wingspan is that of a much bigger player, and so he can get to the rim, get to deflections and stuff like that. It doesn't look real the first time you see him walking around. As far as the rebounding itself goes, I know it's kind of the Houston Cougar answer would be a mixed bag. They'll tell you after the last few years, this team probably isn't as strong in that as previous seasons, right? Where there was Reggie Chaney, Jarris Walker, and those group guys back in 2023. Josh Carlton and those guys the years before that. This group probably doesn't hit the glass quite like those teams, but at a national level, they're 17th in offensive rebound percentage. They do very well relative to the 340 whatever teams in college basketball, right? It's relative to their own standard. I think that people get upset sometimes. And frankly, the height question is interesting, because I do have at least one listener who comments fairly frequently. I'm sure they're typing it out right now. That that part of the problem is they don't have a 7-footer. Why don't they have a 7-footer? How can you be a Division I basketball team without a 7-footer? And truthfully, there's probably some merit to that. I really like the guys we got, though, so I'm not super concerned about it. When you say that what's the guy's name from Azerbaijan, that he's come on as of late, what do you mean by what's he been doing?
Well, you look what he did last game against Colorado. He had 12 points. He had almost 10 rebounds. He blocks a ton of shots. He's an incredible rim protector. This is a guy that came in from Fresno State that I had a coach call me and tell me he was trash, a former coach that was at West Virginia that called me after they were all fired and said, listen, they got a good roster. They're putting a good roster together. But that Andre guy they just signed is trash. And I was like, oh, okay. And he's come on and proved everybody wrong, literally everybody wrong. Like, I'll take him. Like, he really has come on. I don't know how else to put it. He's bought into what Darren DeVries wants him to do, and he plays his role well. And I think one of the things that you just don't know until you get into DeVries' offense, because DeVries plays through the five a lot, and fives distribute his offense. It's a big thing for him. So at the elbow, he's super dangerous. Kind of like Jokic, not to that level, obviously, but like how he distributes, very similar with the DeVries offense. He loves to do that. And he's really come on in that role as a distributor. He's a rim runner. Obviously, he's not going to throw it down to him and let him score. He cleans up dirt and really just protects the rim and rebounds. I mean, he really rebounds. So he's playing his role. He's about 6'10".
He says listed at 6'11" on Sports Reference.
Might be 6'11".
Also, really sly way to drop in a former West Virginia coach. Just say, Huggy. It's cool. It's cool. You can say it. No.
Close. It's close, Huggy,
yeah. Good old Huggy. And frankly, for what it's worth, I will say one of the things why I mentioned Huggy for a second, Kelvin Sampson as a coaching legend. I really wanted when Houston came into the conference to get some Huggy versus Sampson matchups that we never got. So hopefully, you mentioned DeVries.
I truly believe he will be a legend at some point.
He had a great start at Drake, right? Great start at Drake, and is off to a good start at West Virginia.
Drake was one of the worst programs in America for a long time, and he took them to a lot.
He took them over the top. Can I ask you a question about Javon Small? I can't believe we've gotten this far into the program without mentioning his name.
Yeah.
He's getting 19 points per game, or 19.8 points per game as I read this right now. Where does he get? Is he a catch and shoot guy? Is he a drive to the rim guy? Is he a scored all three levels guy? What's he do to get 19.3?
Well, he's obviously our point guard. So here's the thing. He's playing almost 40 minutes a game. That's just start there. He is an elite defender. He does so many things well. He really does. Is he a Jamal Shed on the defensive end? No. But he is a really good defender. I would say, he's in that Javon Carter mold. Now, he's not Javon Carter either on defense. But so he is what I would consider. He's one of those 2,000 level IQ players that you see very rarely. And I mean very rarely, because he doesn't have elite quickness. He's got elite explosion, like he can bounce his head off the rim. But as far as quickness goes, no, he uses a lot of varying degrees of speed change. So he'll go start, stop, and get around people. But where he's really good, he's got an incredible step back jumper with the left hand, with the right shoulder to the left. He's really good with that. He can obviously drive it to the bucket. That's probably his strongest attribute. He's one of those dudes that gets incredible hang time, hangs in the air, gets the contact, and then finishes. Really good there. And obviously he's shooting in the mid-30s from three. So it's a long-winded way to say he scores at all three levels. But the biggest thing about him is he's got the clutch gene. And he has been – saying he's Mr. Big Shot is probably an understatement. West Virginia had 3 straight overtime games in the tournament in Maui versus Gonzaga, Louisville, and Arizona, and he made big shots in every single one of those games to win 2 of those 3 games. And against Kansas, he just outplayed everybody on their team. I mean, he did. He was the best player on the floor that day. Well, same against Colorado last week. I think he's the best point guard in the country right now, the way he's playing.
If his name is familiar, it's because he was at Oklahoma State last year. Houston played him at Oklahoma State last year. He gave Houston 18 points. Houston won that game pretty handily, but he had 18 points against Houston in that one. And when I think about who guards him for Houston, he's a point guard. Milos Uzan's a transfer from Oklahoma. Well, how did Milos do against him? He gave Milos 17 one time and 21 the next. The guy's going to get his points on Wednesday. even as a focal point of what Houston's trying to do to stop him. Have you seen anyone, because apparently I haven't, have you seen anyone stop him or slow him down before we
No,
talk more predictive
nobody.
kind of things?
He's in a great rhythm and groove right now. I will say this, because we've been so injured, we've had been in a 6-7 man rotation for so long now, because Tucker's been out 6-7 games now. We have Jaden Stone, who averaged 20 points a game last year. He hadn't even played yet this year. Been out. Obviously, KJ Tenner, his backup, has been out. We do think he may be back for Houston, which is great, because he's been playing 40 minutes a game and he just can't keep it up on both ends. So he's fallen off in the second half of games here lately. That's like the only thing that I can even make mention of that he doesn't do well. Like, oh my God, he can't play 100% max effort on both ends for 40 minutes.
So what you're
You
saying
know?
is get him in foul trouble because there's no other options. I want to get to some predictive
Yeah.
measures and look at the game a little bit more in a second. But before we get too far, today's show is brought to you by our newest buddies over at Wayfair, because after the holiday hustle, there's nothing quite like giving your home a little TLC. I find that I know you might not believe it by looking behind me, but decluttering and refreshing your space can help you get back into a good routine to start the year. Whether you're tidying up, cleaning out, or just want to give your space a new look to start the new year, Wayfair has everything you need, all within your budget. Folks who listen to Locked On Coogs know we moved and got a new house earlier this year. Got to get new furniture for the new place, right? And they had a great selection, make it easy to find all kinds of different pieces to fit the style we got and the budget we got. Important thing. And teacher and coach over here. Favorite part is the
Big
free and
budget.
hassle-free delivery. Free and hassle-free are both important to me, even for larger items. Wayfair's site is so easy to navigate. We found everything we needed. No time at all. Quick finds on their site. Give your home the refresh it needs at Wayfair. Head to wayfair.com right now. That's Wayfair, WAYFAIR.com. Wayfair, every style, every home. Paul,
Diet
the
Dr.
Houston
P in segment 3.
Diet Dr. P in segment 3. That's might be what this white can in a koozie is.
Might be, might not be.
I want to give too much free sponsorship away. No, all right. So Wayfair is all about fitting out your home. Houston's at home in this one,
Uh-huh.
and I don't mean to be a downer for you. Houston's lost 6 games at Fertitta since it opened.
Yeah.
And it's become a really great environment to play. It's the first home game since kids are back on campus for school. You're obviously going to tell me West Virginia is going to win this one. I guess my question for you is, how would they do it?
Well, no, I'm not saying it's in the bag at all, obviously. So I think West Virginia will be able to hang in there in this game. I don't like the Ken Pom prediction for this game personally. I don't think that respects what West Virginia is this year at 12-3 with the teams that they've beaten. I mean, truthfully, the fact that West Virginia is unranked right now, can we just admit that Kansas at 9 and West Virginia unranked is ridiculous?
So for the folks at home listening that maybe are Houston people don't know this or whatever, first of all, the Ken Pom is got the analytical measure prediction or whatever. It's got Houston winning 68-54. And then West Virginia at 12-3 lost last week to Arizona and is now out of the top 25. Kansas, who West Virginia beat, as we mentioned earlier, is presently ranked number 9, if I'm correct, right?
Right.
And Houston's at 10.
West Virginia's also beaten Arizona.
Yeah, they also beat Arizona earlier this season. Your losses are Pittsburgh and Louisville.
Pretty good losses.
So you feel a little insulted by these
stats.
Yeah, man. Talk to me. What's the thought there? What's going on?
Well, I just think, at 12-3, that's a really good record, especially considering the schedule we've had to go up against so far. 3-1 in the Big 12. I mean, that speaks for itself too, obviously. Pitt, who may be the best team in the ACC, certainly one of. Louisville, before they were injured, was playing really well. That was in overtime, our third overtime game, forgive us, in a row in 3 days. That was crazy. 3 games in over 3 days in overtime. We won 2 out of 3. Gonzaga on the resume, Arizona on the resume, Kansas on the resume. I mean, name the last time that's even happened to a team that's won those 3 games in the same year. just the fact that we're ranked 25th in the coaches poll alone is like, okay, I'll take it, but you can't tell me we're not a top 25 team. It's just frustrating for me because these kids deserve it. They're playing with a 7-man rotation without their best player and without their second best player for a lot of that until this last game against Colorado. So, I mean, they've been doing it without anybody. And now they're getting some guys back. I just think they deserve a little bit more respect. Or, I mean, do I think we beat Houston in Houston? I didn't jump there yet, but I just think, man, look at what they're doing. They got 2 freshmen that they have big minutes from. Obviously, Yesufu, former Kansas guy, put in 18 last week. That was big. I don't know if he can continue to do that, but that would be obviously huge. Jonathan Powell, who was a top 40 freshman that we flipped from Xavier, has been a godsend. One of the best 3-point shooters in the league, thankfully, through these 15 games. Is basically our secondary scorer right now without Tucker. So, but yeah, we need a big game from him if we're going to beat Houston.
Well, so getting scoring from other places obviously helps. I'm predicting this one to be a low-scoring, ugly game. I think that's the part I took more exception at with KenPom is I don't know that I just feel like both defense are going to keep this lower than 68. I think this is going to be a 60 to 55 kind of thing personally. I do pick Houston. I think Houston at home has the edge there. Both teams defensively are pretty stout. I guess if I'm going 60 to 55 and you don't like the KenPom prediction, Paul, what's your score prediction for Wednesday night?
Yeah, I'm with you on the low score. If Tucker was playing, I will say this because Tucker hit 8 threes in a game this year. He's one of the best 3-point shooters in America. He literally can stretch it out past the logo. So that changes things. Like when like that's one of how we beat Arizona. That's how we beat Gonzaga because he was playing. So we don't have him, although we have beaten Kansas without him. So I think this team is still really good without Tucker. Definitely a tournament team. Are they beating Houston at Houston? I don't think so. I pick Houston to win this game too. I think I picked this to go 3. I think we got a shot to go 4-2 over the next 6. I think we'll probably go towards 3-3. But when you measure out our full schedule, I still see 22, 23 wins on the schedule for us, even going 3-3 here the next 6. So it's not going to be a huge blow for us to lose this one. I don't think it's not. It's a great loss if there is such a thing. And I'll say Houston wins this. I'll say 64 to 59. I think it's going to be closer.
I'm sure we'll talk again.
Yeah.
But these two teams meet up again.
They do.
In West Virginia at the end of the month.
Yeah.
A few weeks out, do you flip your prediction for that one or what would change besides scenery there?
Well, that's a good question.
We'll talk again before then. I'm interested.
Yeah, I think obviously we go from Houston to Iowa State, and then we get a little bit of a break with Arizona State and Kansas State. So let's hypothetically my prediction's right. We lose to Houston and Iowa State, but we win against Arizona State and Kansas State. That's that 2-2. I think I could see a world if we're like 2-2 down this next stretch, where we might be in a good spot to win that Houston game at home. One, because we really would need it at that point. Two, because we're so good at home too. We haven't not only lost 6 games, but we do have one of the better home advantages in the league. So from a noise standpoint anyway. So yeah, I could see West Virginia getting that one at home, especially if we just get a couple guys back. 7 guys. It's one thing to have a 7-man rotation for the NCAA tournament. That happens a lot. But for the entirety of for 16 more conference games, you're asking for trouble. These kids will get worn down over that. So we've got to have some players back. There's just no other way around it. Even if we've got an unredshirted guy.
Unredshirted guy.
Yeah.
We bring down all things on both channels. I'm sure if more Deion news pops up, we'll both be covering that and the impact on our respective programs as well. Too big of a ripple effect on that one. And then again, we meet up later this month, so I'm sure we'll talk more again. Mountaineer Paul and Locked on West Virginia, where's the best place to find you at these days?
Yeah, at Paul Mountaineer over on X. I have a Discord as well. which I share the link to that all the time. We'll be doing another deal on that, and then obviously over on YouTube at Locked On West Virginia.
Locked On Coogs, just like Locked On West Virginia, is wherever you get your podcasts, and on YouTube. Hit subscribe, hit the bell so you know we're live. We'll be live after the game on all your social media platforms. I'm at Painsworth512, P like Parker and then Ainsworth, but it is more fun to say that way. Paul, I wrap up every show by saying "Go Cougs." Do y'all have a hand sign? Maybe, kind of, sort of.
No, it's just it's a great day to be a Mountaineer wherever you may be, or let's go Mountaineers. But I can do one actually. How about West Virginia? Is that backwards? Should it be like this?
There you go.
Okay.